Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Authors on Mission podcast, the podcast committed to delving into top-tier insights and strategies employed by established experts to achieve success in their domains. I'm your host, Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome a true digital alchemist to our show. Our guest began as an artist, transformed into a software engineer creating video games, and has now emerged as a critically acclaimed author whose work was recognized as one of the best books of 2021 by Kirkus Magazine. We have many amazing books on the repertoire for discussion today. Pretty much we're going to talk about his role as a full-time creator, the dual-sided world that he's built in his latest novel, and the ambitious 42-day book tour that he is planning. A lot of exciting things to talk about. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Ziah Miller to our show. Welcome.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
I'm very excited to have you on too. It's a true honor, and you've really just dabbled in so many different fields, going from artist to tech and now back to writing. My first question for you is then, what sparked all these changes?
So the starving artist is real, unfortunately. Most people that try to follow their passion, they eat ramen noodles and they don't really make much of an income. So I was actually a concept artist for video games, and actually is a very talented artist. And even though I felt like I was one of the best, I wasn't making that much money, and I was tired of eating ramen noodles. And they put a position out at the company I was working for a junior engineer, I was a mid-level artist, and they're looking for a junior engineer, and it paid 3 times as much as my artist salary. And I was like, oh, I want that job. And they said, well, if you can do the job, we'll give it to you. So within 6 months, well, it's about almost a year when they offered it to me, but from 6 months to a year, I learned how to be a software engineer and I got the job. And then from there, I just continued on making money as a software engineer, making video games, because that fulfilled my creative desire. So I didn't feel like bordered in or collapsed, because I was still creating things that I thought were very storytelling driven, things that were entertaining, fun to play. So I felt fulfilled. But then when the pandemic hit, I just sat inside. So I was like, okay, I'll write a book. And so I wrote a book. It came very well known, it became critically acclaimed, got me an agent and all that stuff. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll pivot again back to being creative. So that's how a quick story of the transition of being an artist, then software engineer, then author.
Well, hey, that's, an amazing path to go on, right? Kind of dabbling and seeing, what your heart wants to do versus, what's going to put food on the table besides ramen, right? And then, going back to what you love at the end of the day. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So, that being said, though, what we were talking about before we began recording is something really cool in the fact that, you kind of took an untraditional route in building your reputation as an artist, because these days people are it's all about the digital world and getting online and stuff, which we are right now. But you were telling me how a lot of it was in person and talking to people, which is really cool. I was wondering if you'd share a little bit about that with us, because all of our listeners today are probably wondering, what can I do that I haven't done already? So perhaps you can.
So I'll start off with saying that first off, I had to really put effort into my book to make sure it was the best. I went through a lot of drafts. My first debut novel went through 11 drafts. I didn't think it was going to be successful. It's not until I got critics coming back to me saying, actually, it's a really, really good debut novel. You should promote it and pursue it. And so I was like, okay, how do I promote this book when everybody during the pandemic wrote a book? I'm not joking. Like, I had friends that were just throwing on Amazon. People were just like, we wrote a book. We were stuck inside. Here you go. And they were thrown out. So that's why I needed to make it good, or not make it good, edit it, make it actual professional book, because what was going to happen is I was competing with a lot of noise. So I was like, how do I separate myself from that noise? And so I thought about just kind of building up towards this one effort thing for this book tour. And so I'd go to farmer markets and I'd promote my book saying I'm doing this book tour. I'd go to a bunch of places saying I'm a local author, and people would see me in person and they'd be like, oh. So I spent probably about a month and a half just promoting myself in person, going to talk to people, putting up posters, and just building up for this one initial push, because I know how algorithms work. I work in data. I know how certain spikes. Nothing builds a crowd like a crowd. Once people see it's popular, it then continues on. So why it did get some claim. I didn't go the biggest because this is my debut novel. I never know how to do it. I'm probably gonna do it better on my second time. But essentially on the first day, I got a bunch of people to get together. We did my actual book tour. They all purchased a book. They all sent it to their friends, and then it spiked me up on the charts. I then got critically acclaimed by actual public critics where they're like, hey, we're going to put you in our magazine. We're going to feature you. And from there, I got enough finance to realize that I could make a living off of this better than just a starving artist. So that's essentially how I went about it for doing it in person.
Understood, right. And I do appreciate kind of backing up a little bit and talking a little bit about the writing process, because that is something that's very important, right? Making sure that it's something that stands out, that's unique, but also has your, personal flair to it, that creativity that you shine with. So,
Yes.
yeah, I appreciate that. I want to talk about both realms now. I'm trying to decide which way to go. I'm going to say, let's keep talking about like the aspect of going in person, having these book tours, and then we'll kind of backpedal a little bit and we'll talk about
Yeah.
the Souls of Milken and a little bit about that and process behind that. So you were telling me some really cool insights before that I think our listeners would benefit from regarding, getting people's attention during speaking engagements, and maybe perhaps you have some tips for people who want to follow in these footsteps.
So, like I said, a crowd builds a crowd and everybody's popularity. So you need to get people just standing around you for no reason. And so to do that, I got a bunch of drawings, I got a bunch of things that people look at. And since I'm an artist, this is something you got to find out what you are good at, what you can provide people kind of for free to build a crowd. So I was just doing drawings for people, a free drawing. Come up and I'll do you a minute sketch. Just say what you want and I'll draw you a minute sketch or a 30-second sketch. And I had some pretty cool little sketches. So people would come up. And so when people were walking by, they'd see a book author, and then they'd see like 12 people next to me, and they'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to walk up and see what this is about." Essentially, you're just trying to find a way for people just to hang out around you, because more people will come and more people will talk to you. If your booth is completely empty or whatever you're doing is there's nobody there, nobody's going to talk to you because they're not going to just walk up. And so I was able to build these people coming up, and it was usually like kids wanting a free drawings, and their parents were there, and their parents would talk about the book, and they're like, "Oh, you're doing a book tour. Like, is the book out yet?" I was like, no, it's not. But come to the book tour. We're going to be cutting cake. You're going to see what it's like. I kind of pitched the event. They're like, "Oh, that sounds really wonderful." And the rule is like only about 25% of the people that you talk to will show up. If that's a high number. And that's what actually did show up, was about 25% of the people that I was expecting, or I said come. And so you're just blasting yourself out there. And I was going to a bunch of festivals. I was going to farmer markets. I was going to anything that I could just get a presence. And most places, if you say, "Hey, I'm just doing free drawings and talking about my book promotion," they're like, "Yeah, set on up. You're not really selling anything. You're not bothering anybody. You're not really just, you're just doing drawings and that's going to bring more people here. Yeah, go ahead." So if you're providing something that's interesting, people will show up, and that's where you're trying to get. So that's where I built up for before my book tour. And that's the marketing I'll be doing before my next book tour, is something very similar to that. I am going to be diving a little bit more into digital realms. Talking to creators, because now I have a little bit more pull and influence, and I'm also having a video game coming out for my books that will have the demo out soon. And it's a card game. It's a deck building card game. It's really fun and engaging, but with that, it's a more digital aspect anyways. So we have to approach the digital realm as well for my next book tour.
I have to say that my mind is just blown right now. Like, first off, back up a little bit. You actually, did caricatures pretty much to get people to come and like hang out around your book, and you pretty much just formed a posse of people. Like, it's kind of like you're putting on a whole show just to be like, "Hey guys, this is a really cool book," and you're building a community around that. That's really awesome. I guess, for anybody listening today, that's another tip to kind of think and say, what can I do? Maybe not all of us are actually artists, but maybe there's another craft you can do, or, maybe some other service. I like that a lot.
It's basically just trying to draw people. It can be an activity or anything you think people would be interested in, just kind of doing real quick. And you don't need like 12 people. That was the highest count, but I'd have 3 or 4 people there. So another person would come over, and it was always kind of like a flow of 3 to 4 people. So you're just looking for something for people to engage with.
I like that. And that's just such an actionable, practical tip that anybody could just like try out on their own when they're, putting themselves out there. Because I can only imagine, like, if there's nobody at your booth and you're a little bit nervous, you don't even, and people aren't going to put themselves out there like you mentioned. So amazing tips right there. And okay, you made your own video game for this book. You made this yourself, I'm assuming, right? Being that you have the whole background in this.
So I was fortunate enough that my book made enough that I was able to fund a game. Yes.
Okay.
So I have 5 employees, and we're currently wrapping up the project. We are looking for funding to finish it off into the bigger scale. If we don't get it, we have a completed game that we can then sell for a smaller price, and then look for a publisher to push that out. But if we get funding for the full game with all the bells and whistles, it'll be another year of development. So we'll see on that. But yeah, I have 5 employees, and it's a card building deck game that it will dive into each one of my books. It's more of like a universe card game. It's all the characters and stuff from every one of my books that you can be able to play.
That is awesome.
I do know video games, and my IP is not strong enough to be attractive. So I came up with a whole new IP with a cool twist and a cool plot that is able to separate from my IP, so people are more engaged in the concept of it. And what the concept is essentially, what if you could take your card from Fate? They're playing their hand and you're one of the cards, and you're trying to get your card back from Fate. So you're pursuing Fate and the Reaper and trying to overcome death by getting your card back. And so that's the concept that kind of goes through, but the characters that you do it through are the characters from my book.
Well, I've heard of a lot of authors, promoting themselves beyond their book in the form of, TED Talks, podcasts, Instagram videos, but making a video game off of it, that's a whole nother level, which is really cool. And I think something that anybody listening today could maybe model it off of, right? Because you're going to get promotion from the game's going to promote from the book, and it's just going to create a whole universe. That's really cool.
Yeah. Correct.
So now that we've discussed all of that stuff, I think I did do a little bit backwards. Usually we talk about the book and then all the extra stuff too. I think I just got really excited about these elements. So to everybody listening today, thanks for holding on. Let's talk a little bit about the content of the book itself. Let me see here. So in The Twin Souls of Nulkin, it explores the concept of, two souls sharing one body, a very unique premise. I'm wondering if you could shine a little bit of light on that, where you come up with this idea, and, without giving too much away, you can just let us know a little bit more about this.
Actually, this is the book I wanted to write since I was 12. Maggie Turncoat, my debut novel, was actually for me to learn how to write, and turned out to be a great character, but it's actually in the same universe as The Twin Souls of Nulkin. So the character I came up with when I was 12 is because my aunt was bipolar, and she would act different towards me every day. I didn't know who I was going to get. I didn't know if I was going to get the nice one or the mean one. And it was something that really kind of stuck into my brain. Nobody knew she was bipolar. I was just kind of aware of her behavior. And I was like, oh, she has like 2 different type of personalities. Which one will I get today? And so I love my aunt. She was a wonderful woman, but you still are kind of aware of this like certain behavior that she had to struggle with. And then I didn't really become aware of like bipolar and schizophrenia and some like these other things until I went to high school and I started making friends who had some personality quirks that were just slightly different, that seemed like they were 2 different people. And so this kind of made me think, well, what would that internal struggle be? I have my own problems that I wish I could rid myself of. And what if that problem wasn't really me and I could remove that problem from me? And so this is kind of the aspect of like, what if someone was walking around and all the problems that they had was another soul? But what if the problems was the part of you that they wanted to get rid of? And so it's this journey of these 2 souls trying to figure out who they are, what part of aspects were them, and them just trying to become whole. So
that's a really cool idea. And honestly, every author's dream, right? To take their childhood idea and be able to develop that later on in life too. Really amazing that you stuck with that and you kind of built out this whole realm now about this concept. And it goes beyond just like the whole mystical aspect, but it talks about, I feel like, identity and belonging too. When I was flipping through it, right, it's a whole theme underlying it. So based on that, I'm curious to know, like, for all the authors out there, what approach did you take in developing these characters? I mean, it must be difficult exploring 2 different identities within one character, right?
So yes, I did get a lot of feedback. I did have a lot. This book actually had a lot of beta readers, a lot. And by the end of it, it was an emotional trek for people that they really, really enjoyed. So hopefully the audience, the actual audience out there will feel the same way. But to go through that, I needed to separate the voices inside the head because most of it is internal dialogue between 2 people from the same experience. So one of the quotes that I liked is, the difference between a hero and a villain is how they react to the tragic events. because a hero and a villain go through the same story. They both had something tragic happen to them. The hero says, I've had something bad happen to me, so I will stop it from happening to you. Where the villain says, I've had something tragic happen to me, and so shall you. And so there's two souls in this body, and they're experiencing the same event, yet they want to do something different about that exact event. And you can see how their decisions will affect them permanently, and they have to work it out. They have to have an ebb and flow to go through it. So sometimes we do things in our life, they're like, why did we do that? That was so stupid. Well, now these two souls can actually see their decisions inside as they're making them, of navigating their life through a situation. And so to do that, I really took two personalities, and I had the ending in mind of where I needed to go. But it did take some detours to really flesh out those personalities, so it didn't feel like I was trying to force the characters into anything. And so why the ending does wrap up very well, and I tried to pull it back to that ending, it was a difficult path to get there because the characters needed to conflict constantly, and I didn't want to have a magical moment where that just saves them from something.
Understood. Yeah, and I
Deus
think.
Ex Machina.
Sorry, what was that?
Yeah, the Deus Ex Machina, the thing that saved her at the end.
Understood. Okay. Well, again, not to spoil the ending, but I can see how that's like it must have been really difficult to resolve that central dilemma, right? Like in your head, you're probably wondering, like, what is it going to end up being? Because it's either you're stuck together forever or you're separate, and I'm sure that's something we could explore in the book itself too. But yeah, I guess I don't want to spoil anything either.
Yeah. So the ending is, regardless of if they're stuck together or if they separate, they need to come to terms that they can either fight and be miserable or accept that they need to become something new. So there's two different ways that they're trying to accept before they get to the end. It's either they have the freedom to be who they want, and they may not like who they want because they're realizing that their actions are, or they're able to accept that they're going to be stuck with this person and accept who they are and adjust to that. So there's several different ways that they're going to approach this ending, and the way that they look at it is that regardless of the end, they still have to live, they still have to exist.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, and I can see how there are just like some powerful metaphors behind all of that too, and in applying it to our own lives. Would you say that these are lessons for people to draw upon as well, in addition to these, really interesting plot points? Like, for example, what would you hope the readers take from all of this?
That everyone's conflicted. So that's something that I realized myself when I was writing the book. It's not just about people who have bipolar or dementia or schizophrenia or anything like that. We all are conflicted in a certain way, and being able to improve on ourselves and trying to adjust to it and not being too hard on ourselves is something that's going to be super, super helpful, because if both souls hate each other for their mistakes, they're just constantly going to war. But when they realize that the other one has made mistakes and they work past it, and they basically put out the olive branch and just peacefully work together, their life becomes better. So.
Understood. Okay. Yeah, I mean, so again, guys, please check out this book. It's a very, very interesting one, and went through many different versions to make it as perfect as it could be. And, not only is it exciting in general, but also has these things for us to learn from too. So let's transition a little bit into the writing process for this book. We know that it went through many different beta reads, as you mentioned before, lots of, edit versions. I'm sure in the beginning it might have been a little bit disheartening, like to hear like maybe feedback and I have to revise again. What might you offer as a piece of advice for anybody listening today who's going through the similar problem of needing to refine their manuscript to perfection?
So once it's out, it's out. And so you can redo it again, but it's best to get it to a certain point. You can't make it too perfect either. So I guess revising it is to get feedback, because keeping myself in my own bubble. Okay, I'll put it this way. When I wrote Maggie Turncoat, I thought it was a great book on the first draft. In fact, I was like, oh, it's a masterpiece. People are going to love it. Sent out to the beta readers, and they all said it was the worst book they ever read. And no joke, they did. They're like, this is horrible. And I was like, really? It's a great story. It wasn't the story that they had a problem with. It's how I communicated the story. So I kept the story same. I did it again, sent to 5 more beta readers. They're like, it's all right. Re-edited it, sent to 5 more beta readers. Oh, it's getting better. But there's a certain point where it's just over polished and it's just too much. And so you have to find that right balance. So I think getting input really, really does help that. And that's hard for a lot of people to get, is honest input and actually take that to heart. But the thing is that people will need to realize it's not what you're creating. It's not your ideas, it's not your concept. It's how you're communicating. The biggest issue may just be like, you're not communicating correctly. They're not understanding or getting the concept. There might be a better way for you to communicate your idea so that it's still your idea. It still has the soul. But now the reader is able to read it better. So for most of any author out there is to find out how to communicate better your ideas and your concepts, because it may not come out the way you think it is.
That's a great way to put it. I think a lot of people I talk to, it's like, I have to go through this edit, or I thought it was great the first time. And, it's a matter of opening your mind to that and, really putting it out there. I do agree that because you sent it to so many people, it only made it better. It helped you clearly communicate your concept. That being said, did you approach this new book differently than you did from the previous ones, being that you've learned from so many different sources of feedback throughout the process?
I did. I noted stuff that I wanted. So now that I knew how to write, I now have a new process to write. And essentially I make a skeleton. And I make emotional impacts all the way through the skeleton. And then I look at that skeleton and I say, okay, what are the key themes that I'm trying to do and how am I communicating? And I know where I'm communicating that part, because sometimes you think you're communicating something and you're not. But now that I went through the process of knowing that, okay, I thought I was, but clearly me wording this way or dropping hints, some of the readers won't quite pick up on those hints, because it's not that they're not there, is that I didn't make them important. I didn't make them a focus. And I thought they'd pick up on something that's more subtle than, I think it's like people are really bad at hints unless they think you're trying to give them a hint. But essentially, I go through my whole skeleton and I try to beforehand pick out the points that I'm trying to communicate, and if I put those in the certain parts. And then when I go through beta readers, they can flesh that out. But again, I still need feedback. I always need feedback to really see what a different person's perspective is, because we can all get in our own heads. Currently, my current book is about a sniper who goes back in time with 101 bullets, and he only has 101 bullets to be able to change history. And it's just this fun little romp that I'm just kind of working on. And then when I send it to people, everybody says it needs to be more dark and more gritty for what type of thing it is. And I make dark, whimsical is more what I make rather than realist, gritty books, I guess.
Okay.
That's what I say. So I have to adjust to the concept that I'm doing.
Yeah, I guess I could see that. I mean, if somebody's going back in time, it kind of reminds me, the concept of it, Stephen King's 1974. I think I'm going to get the name of it wrong just because the years jumble in my head, but pretty much that character also goes back in time and, has to, snipe out. So I can see how in that book it had to be nitty and gritty, but also I wonder, does it always have to be, right? Maybe the way that you had already presented it could have also worked well too. Do you always take to heart this feedback, or is there a way to maybe filter out?
If someone tells you, hey, listen, it's working better this way, it's up to you to make that decision, because everyone's going to have a different opinion. But the beta readers I sent it to so far, I told them what I'm looking for, and they said I didn't get that feel. Because of what I wanted to look for is I didn't want a mythical, supernatural type of event. I wanted something that felt real and felt like you could picture it happening. And that's when they said, okay, it's the fact that it just seemed a little bit more far-fetched than it is for realism and being pulled back into reality. So I was like, okay, more gritty would bring it back into reality a little bit better, because hiding all that stuff, making it more polished, just seems superficial.
Understood. I think what I'm learning here then is you have to have a very strong sense of world building and narrative structure to make sure that you're getting these ideas across. Would you say that your background kind of influences that a little bit, being that you had so much time in game development? I mean, I'm sure that also has an element of world building too, right?
So in video games, you want the player to connect as quick and as fast as you can, and so whatever you can have their build off of their previous knowledge. So world building, if you can build off their existing knowledge, that helps you out a lot. And so since it's a history piece, they're able to do that. The problem is that you're also playing against their knowledge. So in video games, if they're used to a certain mechanic, you have to teach them the new mechanic so that they don't associate it with a different mechanic that they're already working on. So it's same with books. Like, okay, I'm bringing you into a real world. Now I need to break the rules. So I need to explain that in a way that doesn't break reality for you and make you think, okay, this is not my world. This is not something that I can relate to. So you're working off of a world they already have existing. And so with that, I was breaking too many things that connect them to reality that I needed to bring back and say, okay, this world already exists. And you need to think, okay, I can see this person existing in the world that I already know. Whereas fantasy and games, that world doesn't exist. So you're trying to get their fantasy knowledge or their game knowledge and adjust to that.
Understood. Okay, so it's about understanding who is going to be reading the book and what their baseline knowledge is, and really catering it to your audience, I guess, right? Is that something you have in mind when reading your book, then your audience?
Yes, and correct, catering to the audience. I actually, when I went to the book tour, I was expecting most of the people that come visit me at my booth. So I actually did a bunch of conventions, and I got to see the audience that would actually know I existed. And I thought my audience would be probably boys and girls in their teens to late 20s, mainly. Most of the people that came up that had my book, that wanted a signed copy, were women around 40, which is fine, but I didn't realize that that was my audience. I was like, okay, cool, great. Now the audience for my new book is going to be about men my age. Military books, history books, that's usually what it goes towards. So if I'm going to go to that audience, I need to understand what their knowledge is and what their understanding, what their expectations are. I can't just assume. I assumed what my expectations were, and then when I put out there, I wrote my book, I wrote something that does work for that, but it also caters to a different audience.
Well, that's really cool, though. I mean, honestly, the more audiences that you appeal to, only the better, right? I mean, you're not going to turn a crowd. It's all about building.
I don't want to turn, yeah.
Like you mentioned before, the more people, the merrier. So really cool, though. It's really fascinating to know about. I mean, I think like a lot of people, target knowing who they're talking to, especially people that come on my podcast. They're nonfiction authors. They're speaking in the medical field or the self-help field. So they know who they're talking to. But when it comes to fiction books, you don't know who's going to be interested in the plot and the characters. So it's really cool that you can open it up to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that being said, we talked about the Twin Souls of Noken a little bit, but Maggie Turncoat is what is coming out very soon. So I wonder if maybe you want to share a little bit about that book to our readers as well, get them a little bit excited about it and lead them to where they can find out when it comes out.
Okay, so I'm re-releasing Maggie Turncoat with the audiobook and audiovisual book as well to it. So it's a re-release, but it's an updated version of it, and I am actually having a full audiovisual book where we did a bunch of arts. Now, I have a lot of arts that helped out, but we had AI fill in some of the gaps, some of the animations, and some of the motions. And so it's going to be 14 hours of an audiovisual book that we're going to try to promote on a bunch of different channels. So I rewrote Maggie Turncoat. Everything's very much the same. If someone read it, they wouldn't know that there's changes, but I put minor changes there to kind of clear up some stuff, because now I didn't expect the book to do so well. And so now I need to adjust and make it more whole to the lore that this universe is going to be built up. And most of my books, I want them to stand on their own, but they're still in that same universe. So they need to play by the rules. So like I said, I'm actually re-releasing that in 3 months. And with that, what people can expect is the audiovisual book version. If you've already had the paperback or the Kindle or the actual physical copy, the book isn't going to be much different for you to get it. I hate to say that, like, I would love for people to rebuy it, but there's not much of a change for them to get it. It's just that the audiobook is going to be coming out, and I need the updated version to match the audiobook perfectly, that we've put a lot of effort in. We have 2 voice actors that did the male and female voices all the way through it. So it's a very big project that a lot of passion has been poured into.
Understood. So I do apologize for my misunderstanding. I thought that it was simply different, but even better that, you're rewriting it, you're editing it more. And so that's really cool that, you're building it up and allowing people to get more immersed in this world by adding these elements that are going to connect this story even better to the other book. And not only that, but I was impressed by the video game aspect of the other book you mentioned. And now here we have this whole other multimedia thing. Like, it just doesn't end with you. You have so many different types of ways of promoting your books. And I think this is going to be really insightful for everyone listening today who they think they could just publish a book and put it on the shelf and leave it alone, and that's that, right? But you take it to a new level, which is amazing. What inspires you to take this extra step? I mean, is it just your creative intuition, or do you have a coach maybe who's recommended these sort of steps?
It's the way media is changing. So people still read books, but a lot of people want to consume like background noise almost, like, or just watch something. So my book would get a lot more exposure if it had an audiovisual aspect to it. And audiobooks are a lot of way for the audience that I'm targeting with my fantasy books. They listen to audiobooks a lot. And I think with the way technology is going, visual books are going to be a lot easier to produce. So I'm trying to get ahead of that and see how well mine performs. And so while you can get it on Audible, I'm going to be a lot of different channels. We can get the audiovisual book and actually able to watch it and see the world come alive and in front of you. And it's more trying to adjust with the times. And since I had the room to do this and the budget to do this, I thought it would be a good way to adjust to the future before it hit. And I don't want to be the last one there. Scrambling to put something together. The video game aspect is because that's where my career is, and that's where I know I can get some success, and that's where I'm an expert at. As for everything else, this is kind of new ground that I'm kind of putting myself into, that I don't know a lot of other people doing it. So it's a risk. I'm excited. We'll see if it actually gets picked up or if anything happens with it. But yeah.
Yeah, well, it's always important to stay, ahead of the curve. I mean, I've helped clients write business books, for example. We have a lot of case studies about businesses who just fell behind by not, adapting. So it's great that right now you have to start finding ways to get into these new types of fields before it just falls flat or before it's too saturated. So amazing tip right there too to everybody listening. I mean, maybe look for ways that you can do similar things with your book without, crowding it up too much for the rest of us yet. But really cool stuff. So Ziah, I'm wondering, do you happen to have any last bits of advice for the writers out there who are now inspired by all these amazing things you're doing?
So the one advice that I've actually given to a bunch of people that they've taken and they've actually had some success is, your grandest idea is going to take a lot to execute. So start off with something simple, because I did Maggie Turncoat just to start off. Do something just to see if you can do it well. Because a lot of the best authors out there, Brandon Sanderson, he does these courses on writing, and he essentially says a good author can take a bad idea and make a good book, but a bad author cannot take a good idea and make a good book, because it doesn't matter how good your idea is, it's how you're going to execute it. So take something simple and execute it well and see how well that does. And if it does even minor success, then you can do your better idea and actually push a lot more effort into it. But you're trying to polish your ideas, because if it doesn't do very well, you can just adjust it. Keep adjusting the idea until it does somewhat well, and then you've been able to get the skill set to communicate your grand idea. So it's all about communication and understanding how to present it. So just start something small and just try to communicate the best you can so it seems like something good, and then take your good idea and then improve upon it. So yeah.
Thank you. I love how that kind of came full circle too, because we did discuss a little bit earlier on about how important it is to deliver your idea. You could have an amazing concept, but if it's just not presented well, it's not going to resonate. So I'm glad that kind of circled back with that concept, and it's something that you definitely have achieved with the whole world building aspect of what you're creating. So really cool stuff. So if anybody does want to get in touch with you and, be in tune with the next release and the book tour, all that, where can they find you and how can they reach out?
So the best way to find me is go to forgottenbastions.com or Ziah Miller at forgottenbastions.com. You can actually email me. That's through my thing. Or if you type in Ziah Miller in Google, it should pop up with all of my credentials, my Instagram. So fortunately, because of my name, I'm very easy to find. And so you can still get a hold of me on Instagram. I still message. Now, if you go to Forgotten Bastions, there is probably a 95% chance it's my assistant talking to you. So I don't mind talking to people directly, but if it's anything about the books or just some generic stuff, my assistant, she knows all about the whole world and stuff like that. And so she usually answers like questions. But if it's personal towards me, she sends it my way.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that. We're going to put the links into the description box of this podcast. So when we're finished today, everybody go ahead and click on it and, stay in touch because Ziah, you're up and coming. This is not even getting to touch the tip of the iceberg here. I feel like you're going to have a whole new system here. So yeah, I mean, thank you for all this. Guys, follow him, check it out, stay in tune. And Ziah, just thank you so much for coming on to our podcast today. It's been really exciting.
Thank you so much, Danielle. I appreciate it a lot. It's been a fun time.
Yeah, definitely. And to our listeners, I hope today's conversation has really given you the valuable insights into how persistence, attention to detail, world building, and willingness to take bold career leaps can really just lead to creative fulfillment. So listeners, if you're writing your first book or considering a career change or looking to expand your own creative horizons, just remember that success comes after multiple drafts, feedback, the courage to put your work into the world, and of course, building a community around it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to check out our other ones, and don't forget to click on those links and learn more about the fascinating Two Souls of Nolkien and the upcoming Maggie Turncoat renditions. And other than that, have an amazing day. Keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.